The studio lights of Piers Morgan Uncensored burned bright that evening. Millions of viewers were already tuned in, curious about what could be one of the most anticipated interviews of the year, Prince Harry facing off with Piers Morgan. The tension was thick in the air before a single word had even been spoken. Harry sat down across from Piers, adjusting his collar. His expression was calm but distant, the kind of calm that hides storms underneath. Piers leaned forward with his classic smirk, papers in hand, ready to fire questions like bullets. "Good evening, Prince Harry," Piers began smoothly, though his tone carried a sharp edge. "Or should I say, just Harry. Since you've stepped away from everything that made you royal." Harry didn't flinch. "Good evening, Piers. And yes, just Harry is fine. Titles don't define people, actions do." The audience murmured softly, sensing the spark of confrontation already beginning to flare. Piers chuckled. "Actions, you say? Interesting. Because many people think your actions, abandoning your family, attacking the institution, and complaining from your mansion in California, were anything but noble." Harry's jaw tightened. "I didn't abandon my family. I walked away from a system that destroyed my mother and tried to do the same to my wife. There's a difference." Piers leaned back, clearly enjoying the verbal duel. "Ah yes, the ever-blameless victim routine. Everyone's out to get poor Harry and Meghan, aren't they?" Harry's voice grew colder. "You can mock me all you want, but you don't understand what it's like to have your wife receive death threats, your children insulted, and your privacy torn apart just for existing." The air grew heavier. Even the production crew behind the cameras shifted uneasily. But Piers wasn't done. "You chose this, Harry. You and Meghan could have had peace. Instead, you chose the spotlight. You make documentaries, release books, give interviews, and yet you claim to want privacy. Isn't that hypocrisy?" Harry leaned forward now, eyes blazing. "No, Piers. Privacy doesn't mean silence. It means control over your own story. You make a career out of twisting people's pain into entertainment. You did it to my mother, to Meghan, and now to me." The studio went silent. Even Piers' confident smirk faltered for a second. Then he snapped back, louder this time. "Your mother, Princess Diana, was one of the most beloved women in the world." "Don't you dare," Harry interrupted sharply. "She was hounded by the press until her last breath. You think I don't remember being a 12-year-old boy, walking behind her coffin while cameras flashed in my face? You think that didn't scar me?" Piers slammed his palm on the desk. "Then stop blaming everyone else for your pain. You're a grown man, not that boy anymore." Harry stood up, his voice low but firm. "And you, Piers, are still the same bully you've always been, hiding behind journalism to attack people you envy." A wave of gasps came from the audience. Piers' face reddened. "Envy? Don't flatter yourself. I speak for millions who are tired of your hypocrisy. You cry victim while cashing million-dollar checks off your family's name." Harry leaned across the desk, eyes unblinking. "And you cash yours off hatred. The difference is, I'm trying to heal, you're trying to profit from pain." The tension had reached its peak. The producer whispered frantically into Piers' earpiece, "Cut to break, now." But Piers waved him off, refusing to stop. "Oh, please," Piers barked, "spare us your therapy talk. You've become Hollywood's Prince of Pity. You left the royal family for freedom, but all I see is someone desperate for attention." Harry's expression hardened. "You talk about freedom. You're chained to controversy. Without conflict, you're nothing." The two men stared at each other, neither blinking. It was a battle of worlds, tradition versus rebellion, the press versus privacy, old wounds versus new truths. Then Harry slowly turned toward the camera. "This is exactly what's wrong with the media, people like Piers Morgan, who think shouting louder makes them right. It doesn't." Piers shot back, "And people like you think playing the victim makes you virtuous. You're a disgrace to the crown." Harry froze for a second. The insult hit deep. He took a deep breath and shook his head. "If standing up for my wife, my children, and my peace makes me a disgrace, then I'll wear that title proudly." The studio was silent again. Then Harry removed his microphone, tossed it on the table, and said calmly, "I'm done." Piers smirked, trying to regain control. "Walking away again, Harry. That's what you do best." But Harry didn't look back. He walked off the stage, leaving behind stunned silence and flashing studio lights. Piers stood up and shouted toward the cameras, "That's Prince Harry for you, can't handle the truth." The director signaled to cut the feed, but the damage was done. Within minutes, social media exploded. Hashtags like hashtag Piers vs Harry and hashtag walk-off showdown trended worldwide. Some praised Harry for standing up to Piers, others cheered Piers for exposing hypocrisy. But behind the scenes, the network executives were furious. The show had spiraled into chaos. One of them stormed into the studio, pointing a finger at Piers. "You went too far, Morgan. You're off the air, for now." For the first time that night, Piers Morgan had no words. Harry, on the other hand, walked quietly into the cold London night, tired, but free. The morning after the explosive interview, the entire world was still buzzing. Every major news channel replayed clips of the confrontation between Prince Harry and Piers Morgan. The headlines were relentless. Greater than, Piers Morgan loses control on live TV. Prince Harry walks out in fury. Unseen footage from behind the scenes revealed. The internet was divided like never before. Some called Piers a national hero for speaking his mind, while others demanded his suspension for disrespecting the Duke of Sussex. Hashtags, memes, and opinion threads flooded social media platforms from London to Los Angeles. At his home in Montecito, Harry sat in his study, scrolling through the chaos. Meghan walked in quietly, holding 2 mugs of tea. "You shouldn't read that stuff," she said softly. Harry sighed. "I know. But I needed to see what people are saying. It's like they all watched a different version of the same moment." She sat beside him. "You spoke your truth, Harry. That's what matters. You didn't lose your temper, you stood your ground." Harry looked out the window at the California sunshine, a sharp contrast to the storm he'd left behind in London. "Piers won't let it go," he muttered. "He thrives on conflict. I just gave him more fuel." Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Piers Morgan sat alone in his office at Talk TV. His phone kept buzzing, messages from producers, sponsors, and even old colleagues. Some congratulated him, others scolded him. But what hurt most was the message from the network executive. "Greater than, effective immediately, you are suspended pending review. You went too far on live television." Piers threw his phone onto the desk, anger pulsing through him. "Too far," he shouted into the empty room. The man walked out. "Not my fault." But deep down, he knew it wasn't just about Harry. His tone, his aggression, his refusal to back down, it had all come back to bite him. A few days later, Harry received a call from an unexpected number. When he answered, it was an old voice, one that carried weight. "Harry, it's Charles." Harry froze for a second. "Father." "Yes," King Charles III replied quietly. "I watched the interview." Harry's heart raced. He hadn't spoken to his father in months. "I didn't plan for it to go that way," he said quickly. "I know," Charles said. "But you must understand, every word you speak, every action you take, reflects on all of us. Even now." Harry exhaled slowly. "I wasn't trying to attack the family. I was defending mine." There was a pause. Then Charles said, "Sometimes defending one's family requires silence, not confrontation." Harry felt a sting of guilt but also defiance. "And sometimes silence destroys people, Father. It nearly destroyed me." The line went quiet for a long moment. Then Charles spoke again, softly. "Perhaps you're right. But I hope one day, you'll find peace without needing to fight." When the call ended, Harry sat still, staring at nothing. Meghan came in, concern on her face. Was it him? He nodded slowly. Yes. For the first time, he didn't sound angry. Just tired. Back in London, Piers was invited to a private meeting with the network heads. He walked in wearing his usual confidence, but his eyes betrayed exhaustion. One of the executives leaned forward. "Piers, the numbers are through the roof. That episode broke viewership records." Piers smirked. "So what's the problem, then?" "The problem," she said sharply, "is that your behavior violated every rule of broadcast conduct. We can't risk another on-air meltdown. You're officially off the air for the next month." Piers clenched his fists. "You're punishing me for doing my job, asking hard questions." She stood up. "There's a difference between hard questions and personal attacks. You crossed the line." As he left the building, flashes of cameras blinded him. Reporters shouted questions. "Piers, are you fired? Do you regret attacking Harry? Will you apologize?" He ignored them all, pushing through the crowd. For once, Piers Morgan had nothing to say. That night, alone in his London apartment, he poured himself a drink and stared at the TV replaying his own outburst. For the first time, he saw what millions had seen: the anger, the arrogance, the loss of control. He turned off the screen and whispered to himself, "Maybe I did go too far." Across the ocean, Harry stood in his garden as the sun set. He wasn't thinking about the show anymore. He was thinking about the phone call, his father's voice, and the way the past refused to stay buried. Meghan came out and slipped her hand into his. "You did what you believed was right." Harry smiled faintly. "Maybe. But I don't think the story's over yet." She looked at him curiously. "What do you mean?" He looked up at the evening sky. "Because men like Piers Morgan don't stay silent for long. And neither do I." A week later, an email popped into Harry's inbox from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read, "Greater than, private recording, what Piers said after you left the studio." Harry's heart skipped a beat as he opened it. Inside was a short video clip, unseen footage from moments after he had stormed off set. Piers could be heard shouting at the crew, "He's weak. A royal snowflake. He doesn't deserve that title." But then, his tone suddenly shifted. "Still, maybe the kid's got a point." The clip ended. Harry stared at the screen, uncertain whether to be angry or surprised. Maybe, just maybe, Piers Morgan wasn't entirely heartless after all. And as the world waited for Piers' next move, and Harry's next word, one thing was certain. The war between truth and pride had only just begun.